Okay, so welcome everyone to basically May's, the month of May's Divani Ishq, and it's again lovely to have everyone here. And today we have a very special guest. We have Dr. Uzma Rahim, who's situated in Saudi Arabia. And I'd like to just do a brief introduction to Dr. Uzma Rahim. She's not well actually, so that's why we can't see her, and hence the camera's off. But we're going to be learning a lot and getting some insights of basically the leading psychopathologist here in the kingdom, and I would say the Middle East for sure, hands down. She's Dr. Uzma Rahim is Saudi Arabia's first multilingual center, founder of the first multilingual center for special needs in Saudi Arabia. She has co-founded and co-directed LEAP, a Scandinavian concept of brain-based learning. The education and development she's an instructor from the University of Manchester and a consultant at Gerson Lehrman. She's on the panel at Frost and Sullivan. She's a member of APA, Santry Elite, NAEYC, National Association for the Education of Young Children. She's also the first to introduce sensory brain breaks in KSA. First to bring play therapy into focus in KSA, first to introduce multi-sensory teaching styles in KSA. Chief trainer for Master English in London Trainer Teacher College. So many credentials, mashallah. Chief trainer for teaching, for teacher training in the Finnish School of Education or System of Education. She's a former advisor at Human Rights Commission, former advisory board member of Speech and Hearing Department at Dar al-Hikmah. She's had over 37 nominations. She's also the recipient of 12 international awards, including Boeing 4 times, the International Powers Award for Fastest Emerging Center in the Middle East, European Union Human Rights Chaliot Award, first runner-up, UNDP, United Nations Development Program, and some of the charitable projects that she's involved in is the Mount Mercy School, Al-Asr Foundation in Hyderabad, India, Feed the Need, Jeddah, KSA, Uzi Crumbs Baking for Serving, and many other things. Wait, there's one here, featuring in a book to be released soon on women's achievers in the kingdom by Rasha Al-Alajos. Obviously, what I read doesn't do much justice, but it gives us a brief. I've personally known Uzma for how long now? Probably almost a decade, Uzma?
Yeah, probably more.
Probably more. And, you know, I'd let her basically just give like, you know, maybe a quick 1 minute of how we, you know, how and when we met and how that's relative to healing and how this all sort of kind of connects the dots. And we've been doing things, you know, through healing mediums with Dr. Uzma. She's had multiple programs at her school as well, where the parents of special needs children who need support and training and basically support. She's done a lot of those programs, which I had the honor to attend. So I've seen a lot of her works in action. She's a person who's very involved in the betterment of society and I guess one of the most vulnerable members of society, and that's the special needs children. So it's an honor to have you here, Uzma or Dr. Uzma. And, you
So
know,
please
it's just,
call me Uzma, and the
yeah,
honor
I
is
know,
totally mine.
because we joke around a lot. So It sort of
I think
sounds
we had met
sarcastic.
on a common friends, common thread where you were commenting and I was commenting something on yoga. And, somehow from from commenting on yoga to inboxing each other, I think that's where, our friendship took off. And I've definitely found myself picking up the phone and making sure that you are the first person that I spoke to or I took advice from if I had anything majorly going on in my own life. And yeah, that's where it took off from, Alhamdulillah.
So thank you for that. Louisa, how do you suggest we commence the program? Just before we
I'm
have
thinking
Dr. Usma.
our original plan was to start with some reflective penning, but I'm thinking, Dr. Uzma, depending on how you feel, because we wouldn't want to keep you here if you feel like you need rest. Do you feel inclined to start with
No,
our
no, no,
part
no.
now?
I can, because you see, it's not on, it's not live. So I'm perfectly all right. Just let's go ahead, because this is something I committed to. So definitely I would like to, give my 2 cents out to anybody who needs my help out there, inshallah.
All right. So should we start with some penning on the theme, just a very short one? That
Yeah.
way also you who are here today for the first day get a bit of a sense of what we're doing usually in the divan. And then the word is Dr. Uzma's for the rest of the
Sure,
session.
sure,
Yeah?
why not? Yes.
Would you, Alicia, want to read the reflective penning?
I would love it if you could do that.
Okay,
And
sure.
and then you can, for those who are here for the first time, just give them like a quick brief of how it works, listening.
Of course.
Yeah.
So generally we've been conducting the penning in such a way that we start with something that we read, something inspired by a theme, like Alicia mentioned, for those of you who are here a bit earlier. And after we've listened to the penning, we just take some time to write down anything that comes to mind, any flow state penning that arises. So like Alicia mentioned, there's no special structure we follow. There's no particular mode of writing that you have to follow in your expression. And then we can share. Those who want to share can share. And I was thinking, since we also had a little piece of music for today, maybe I'll start with the penning, and then I will give the translation for the mantra. Uzma, you also mentioned yoga. So this is a mantra from the Kundalini yoga tradition that we've chosen for today. And then I was thinking maybe we can let that mantra be in the background as we're penning. In that way we get some ambiance, like we usually have, some music.
Perfect.
So any position, any way you feel comfortable. This penning is the guest house. And this is by Rumi, right? Yes.
Yeah.
This being human is a guest house. Every morning, a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all. Even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house, empty of its furniture, still treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whatever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond.
That concludes the poem, so we can, we'll give everybody about 7 minutes to, write and pen. And we don't need to share this time, right? Because of the time.
Sure.
Yeah.
We can
at the
share maybe
end.
in the group, those
Yeah,
who want to,
for
or
sure. Yeah.
in the chat or
This
something
is,
like
yeah,
that.
this is the therapy part where we're going to be penning whatever impressions we get. What about the music?
Yeah, I'm thinking, shall I send you the link and then you, since you're
Yeah.
host, if you want to
Sure.
share it?
Mhm.
And I'll post the lyrics in the chat for those who want to see the translation.
So all of you are able to.
राखे रखन हारे आप बारियन कुरी की पैरी पाए काज सवारियन हो आप दयाल मनोहना विसारियन साध जना के संग भव जल तारियन साकत निंद दुष्ट किन माह बिदारियन इस साहिब की टेक नानक मन माए जिस सिमरत सुख होए सगल दुख जाए राखे रखन हारे आप बारियन कुरी की पैरी पाए काज सवारियन हो आप दयाल मनोहना विसारियन साध जना के संग भव जल तारियन साकत निंद दुष्ट किन माह बिदारियन जिस साहिब की टेक नानक मन माए जिस सिमरत सुख होए सगल दुख जाए राखे रखन हारे आप बारियन कुरी की पैरी पाए काज सवारियन हो आप दयाल मनोहना विसारियन साध जना के संग भव जल तारियन साकत निंद दुष्ट किन माह बिदारियन जिस साहिब की टेक नानक मन माए जिस सिमरत सुख होए सगल दुख जाए राखे रखन हारे आप बारियन कुरी की पैरी पाए काज सवारियन हो आप दयाल मनोहना विसारियन साध जना के संग भव जल तारियन साकत निंद दुष्ट किन माह बिदारियन जिस साहिब की टेक नानक मन माए जिस सिमरत सुख होए सगल दुख जाए राखे रखन हारे आप बारियन कुरी की पैरी पाए काज सवारियन हो आप दयाल मनोहना विसारियन साध जना के संग भव जल तारियन साकत निंद दुष्ट किन माह बिदारियन जिस साहिब की टेक नानक मन माए जिस सिमरत सुख होए सगल दुख जाए राखे रखन हारे आप बारियन की पैरी पाए काज सवारियां हो आप दयाल मनोहना विसारियां साध जना के संग भव जलधारियां साखत निंदक दुष्ट किन्न माह बिदारियां जिस साहिब की टेक नानक मन माए जिस सिमरत सुख होए सगले दुख जाए राखे रखना हारे आप बारियां गुरु की पैरी पाए काज सवारियां हो आप दयाल मनोहना विसारियां साध जना के संग भव जलधारियां साखत निंदक दुष्ट किन्न माह बिदारियां जिस साहिब की टेक नानक मन माए जिस सिमरत सुख होए सगले दुख जाए राखे रखन हारे आप बारियां गुरु की पैरी पाए काज सवारियां हो आप दयाल मनोहना विसारियां साध जना के संग भव जलधारियां साखत निंदक दुष्ट किन्न माह बिदारियां जिस साहिब की टेक नानक मन माए जिस सिमरत सुख होए सगले दुख जाए राखे रखन हारे आप बारियां गुरु की पैरी पाए काज सवारियां हो आप दयाल मनोहना विसारियां साध जना के संग भव जलधारियां साखत निंदक दुष्ट किन्न माह बिदारियां जिस साहिब की टेक नानक मन माए जिस सिमरत सुख होए सगले दुख जाए राखे रखन हारे आप बारियां गुरु की पैरी पाए काज सवारियां हो आप दयाल मनोहना विसारियां साध जना के संग भव जलधारियां साखत निंदक दुष्ट किन्न माह बिदारियां जिस साहिब की टेक नानक मन माए जिस सिमरत सुख होए सगले दुख जाए राखे रखन हारे आप बारियां गुरु की पैरी पाए काज सवारियां हो आप दयाल मनोहना विसारियां साध जना के संग भव जलधारियां साखत निंदक दुष्ट किन्न माह बिदारियां जिस साहिब की टेक नानक मन माए जिस सिमरत सुख होए सगले दुख जाए राखे रखन हारे आप बारियां गुरु की पैरी पाए काज सवारियां हो आप दयाल मनोहना विसारियां साध जना के संग भव जलधारियां साखत निंदक दुष्ट किन्न माह बिदारियां जिस साहिब की
Okay, now we're back. And we hope everyone has done their penning. And we can proceed with our topic today. What is our topic? As part of our emotional health series, we're going to be discussing from Dr. Uzma's insights in the field of healing and therapy and all her experience about, how we can alleviate symptoms of stress, anxiety, and depression. And if you'd like to ask any questions, you can, and or even actually just type in the chat here, and that way we can afterwards in our question answers we can go into it.
Yes,
But,
it will be nice if it can be interactive, you know.
Yeah.
People will gain insight from each other's queries. That's what I've always found. So,
Right.
So you prefer that the questions are asked immediately and then,
I'm perfectly okay with anything. I'm just going with the flow, to be honest.
all right.
Do you, the host, want to start off with something so that, you know, it will set the tone for the rest of the...
Basically, you've been dealing with, you know, a lot of women in 20 years plus, probably 30 years of, you know, work in this field. And in my previous, you know, workshops with you where, you know, we were, you know, learning from you, I recall you mentioning, you know, alternatives to what would normally be administered for people experiencing symptoms of depression and anxiety and so forth, i.e. medication. And I recall you providing alternatives to that, such as, for example, melatonin and, you know, grounding and natural therapies and so forth. So, you know, maybe we can go into some of the alternatives, or what are the
I am not
suggested.
against medication, to be honest with you. When the benefits outweigh the risks, medication is advisable, to be very honest. But what I've found is that people tend to reach out for the medication faster than anything else. Just before you do that, you remember, for any sort of depression, anxiety, panic attacks, any of those neuroses, anytime that happens, please consider that medication should be there. But before that, try what is going to work for you immediately. And the key to any such situation is movement. People downplay on the big role movement has in fixing a lot of our issues. You know, just even shifting the place where you're sitting can change the way you are learning or the way you're experiencing something. So that's why my advice to any of the ladies in here today is that people say that we have got 5 senses, some say we have 8 senses. Scientists say that we have about 300. Now for every person, every different system can be activated. Maybe I can be a visual learner. Lisa can be an auditory learner. And maybe Alicia is a blended learner of both, you know, visual and auditory. So you never know which system is more operative in which human being. We may, let me just put both you and Lisa into this now. Lisa, what is the first thing you saw when Alicia came live? I mean, you know, seeing this visuals, right now I have Alicia. What is the first thing you saw? Right, May said she saw the colors. Right. Anyone else?
The painting.
The painting. the blue. So you see, a lot of you were attracted to, now this is called the figure ground perception. No one noticed Alicia, who's the figure, but they all saw the ground. Thank you, Meg. The shadow, I saw the shadow too. You know, I did see the blue because that was very striking, but immediate, and because I know Alicia, I saw her with glasses, and then I saw the shadow. So each one of us can enter into a room, and depending on how operational whichever sense is right at the front, which is highly operating at that point of time, that's the information that's going to first get filtered in our system. I do say to a lot of couples that I'm counseling that you may enter the same room, you know, and I actually make them do this exercise when they enter the room, and I ask them, what did you first see? The husband might say that he saw the sofa I was sitting on. The wife might say the color of my scarf, you know, and things like that. Or if they are actually coming physically into my space, then, you know, the husband can say, I saw the chairs and tables, and the wife might say, I saw the color of the walls. Now, you're entering the same space from the same place. I mean, there's just one door, they're not different doors, from the same door. But how come different things are registering with different people? That's because, subhanallah, the sensory system has been created so differently for everybody. It's like our fingerprints, that no two fingerprints are like. It's the same, that no two sensory systems are like. And the information that you're filtering in. Now, what is the role of the sensory system, you might ask me? The information that you gather from your environment, no matter what environment you are in. You may be in a classroom, in a garden, in your kitchen, anywhere. Even this Zoom meeting that we are having online, you're in the space as well. Your senses just get the information from the environment, and they filter this environment, filter this information, and they store it in your forehead. Now, the forehead is where the, you know, frontal cortex is, and that's your short-term memory. It stores it over there for about 10 to 20 seconds. And if you constantly keep on repeating yourself, repetition is key, 3 times or more, or if you scan your environment 3 times for that information, from the short-term memory, it goes on into the long-term memory. And guess what the reason for our overthinking is? We take on one topic and we focus so much on it that we keep on repeating the same thought. And especially for those ladies out there who have, you know, who are seeing the patterns of negative thoughts just running repeatedly in their heads. Remember this. This is because you have been scanning, you know, that information and going on repeating it in your head or in your sensory system and loading it or storing it. Try that, you know, when things are negative, like I'll take the example of this song that you just played. I think it had its background in the Hindi language or the Sanskrit, because there were words there.
Yeah, I
that
think it's
I knew,
the
yeah.
Gurmukhi, the Sikh language, probably since it's the Kundalini yoga.
Okay, all right. So a lot of those words were familiar to me. So could you see that she kept on repeating, and she was talking about sukh and she was talking about dukh. Sukh means pleasure and dukh means pain. And she kept on repeating it. I didn't understand the rest, but you could see why was there repetition, so that you would catch on. So you would get hooked. So you would actually start repeating it. This is how things in the universe work. Repetition is key to either picking up the good or the bad. So when you pick up a bad thought and it's starting to now run itself in your system over and over and over again, the first thing to do is actually not to pick up these thoughts, but not a lot of us are very, mindful enough to not notice that this is a thought I should not be going near. Very, very mindful people immediately spot it from a distance, and and they know that they're not even going to allow that thought to be processed in the minds. But not a lot of us operate that way. So if we happen to even pick up any thought, that we are processing in that manner, then the first thing that you need to do is cut it off from the roots. Now, what I mean by cut it off from the roots is distract yourself with a thought that is 180 degrees away from it. 180 degrees. I mean, this usually works, for people who have thoughts on self-harming or suicide. When the thought comes, I immediately tell them to imagine themselves traveling, or you are just in the, in the Jannat al-Naim, in the gardens of delight. Just transform yourself into another space, a space that is 180 degrees away from where you are right now. And when you keep on doing that over a period of time, you automatically find that you have trained your brain. You don't need to work very hard on transforming yourself into another space when the negative thoughts strike you, or when you feel the Saturn creeping up on you. You're able to immediately, without any effort, it actually happens. But it needs a lot of training. You keep on doing, some people pick it up beautifully, some people take more time, and some are not able to grasp the concept. But experimentation is key to how we will find out what really works for us. Any questions in here?
Mehtab has a question.
Can you just read that out, Lisa?
She says, what about when we're surrounded by a negative space? How to navigate it?
I'm going to talk, because I'm not one of the energy healers, to be honest with you. My funda is very clear. I am very blunt on how I leave spaces. Alicia knows this. I simply move. As I said, movement is key to anything. And you're not a tree, you have not been planted in any space, just walk off. Because protecting your aura or your own energy field is your responsibility. It's not the other person's responsibility. And I wanted to know one more thing, because the human mind notices the negative first before it notices the positive. So therefore, whenever you are in any field, you will actually notice that the negative is more overpowering. Yes, in the long run, the positive can overtake it. But initially, when you are in that space, you will find that negativity or, the bad, poor energy is actually very overwhelming. But the people who give off this aura are not really in control of it themselves, because it's been years of buildup of poor, pathetic energy. So the only way for us to protect ourselves is to move from there. Movement is key, not just for depression, anxiety, and other things. Movement is also key for a whole lot of things happening in our lives.
So maybe related to that movement, Sumaya is asking, when you mentioned you switch 180 degrees away from the negative thought or situation, do you do it so that you see the thought or situation in a positive light, or do you switch to a completely different thought?
How I first started this was when I started learning about it. I was going through a lot in my own life, and the way I could transport myself from these stressful situations was to imagine myself, because I'm a gardener, to imagine myself in a valley full green and just filled with white flowers of all kinds. That worked for me because that's a space my heart recognizes. That's a space where I find the peace. When you plant white flowers along with their foliage, it's called a moonlight garden. And somehow, although I plant everything, I've got a very colorful garden, but somehow for my peace, I get transported into something that's white. Loads of places, I find myself in Medina. You can see that my picture is also of the Rauda, where I got a chance to pray. When the Rauda had first opened during COVID period. So I took a picture of that, and that's a space I transport myself to frequently. So you will have to test out on what really works for you. It can be 180 degrees different from what you're experiencing or what you're thinking right now, or it can just be another situation that you would like to be in rather than where you are right now.
So you're not trying to manipulate the thought as such, you're just removing yourself completely from that thought or,
No, yes.
or emotion.
You know something, give your brain, your own body, give it the credit, because you don't really have to manipulate anything. It will come so naturally after some days of training. It will come so naturally. The brain will train itself. 3 repetitions is all it requires for those who are extremely mindful. And for the rest of us that are not so mindful, it might take more than 3 repetitions, but we get there. We get there.
So it's basically a combination, what you mentioned, of movement, visualizations.
All right, now what I mean by movement is, you have a situation and you're sitting down, get up. If you're standing up, start walking. You start walking, start running. If you are running, stop. You need some air, sit down, calm down. That's what I mean by this, because the human body is divided into, 3 imaginary planes. You can imagine one plane running from the forehead, straight from the forehead, splitting your body into 2, the left to the right. And then you have another line that separates your top to your bottom. Okay. And then you have another line that separates your back to the front. And these are called the midlines. And every time we cross a midline, there is some healing going on somewhere. The reason for that is whenever we cross a midline, the 2 hemispheres of our brain, they connect better with each other and they pass on information more smoothly to each other and they back off each other, So whenever you bend down to touch your toes, that's your, you are moving the midline, that is your top to your bottom. And one activity that crosses all your midlines is the salah, when you're praying. Another activity that crosses all your midlines is yoga itself. And whenever these midlines are crossed, some sort of healing somewhere happens. Not necessarily in your brain. It can be in your body. It can be in just, on how your cells are energized, or how your cells are moving, or how information is being processed from one neuron to another. Everything depends on movement. A lot of people underestimate it, but I keep telling them, you are having depression, move, move, move. Cross those midlines as much as you can, and do it to a point where you're sweating, not from your forehead or not behind your ears, the common areas where the sweat glands are very active, but maybe let the sweat drip from your fingertips. And that's when you know that you have moved them so hard that what has happened is the dopamine, the serotonin, the natural chemicals of our body, or the feel-good hormones, or the neurotransmitters in our body, they're all activated by our brain. They're released by the brain. So you don't need medication in order to feel good when your body can do that. Now, for a lot of people, despite moving and all, they might not have that dopamine or serotonin easily released. Now, in those severe cases, yes, then medication can be an option, but without experimenting with what is available. Like, let me just teach you one simple trick. When you are facing, an anxiety attack coming on, or you are panicking, or you suddenly feel this bout of depression and no one's around, and you're feeling that helpless moment, the first thing that you can do is, yes, not just move, but get yourself ice cold water. And I mean by 4 degrees temperature or less. And just plunge both your hands into it, right up to your wrists. There's something about your limbic system emerging people, I mean, not a lot of our therapists give solutions to people because they like people coming back to them, and they like, people being hooked to therapy so that they can earn. But the therapist is in each one of us. If we find the right solutions, if we can just show people the way, we can only be guides. It's you, it's the person himself or herself who has to take that path. We cannot be doing the healing for them. We just show them on how it is done, and they have to pick it up. Pick it up, rub it against themselves, absorb it, live with it, stay with it, love it maybe, pay attention to it, let it grow, and they can grow along with that. That's my funda, and that's how I operate as a therapist. I don't believe in doing everything for everyone. So coming back now to water, this is one of the things, and what they say is that when you're fully agitated, very aggressive, take a cold shower. Take a cold shower. When you're severely depressed, take a cold shower, because that activates your cells. And when you are severely angry, aggressive, then take a hot bath. The reason is because it calms you down, it soothes the cells. And a lot of people are not taught this, on when a cold shower should be taken and when a hot bath should be taken. Any questions in here, so that I just don't keep on going?
I think May has a question.
Okay. How do you detect a negative thought? Is it a sensation in your body? Is it cued by your environment and circumstances?
I think, Alicia, you're far better person to answer that. I think it's like an instinct where you know that something is not right or something is not in balance, let us say, or something does not feel okay. You know, I mean, what you're experiencing does not seem aligned with who you are or what you are. That's what I think, that it would be, because anything positive would just feel right, or it would feel like something that you would love to align with, or maybe like a magnet just, propels you towards its direction, but not with negativity. With negativity, you'll probably find, okay, this is something, that is not aligned with who I am. This is not who I am. For me, it would be that.
I guess the more we are in tune with the subtle sensations in our body, then that feeling of something is not right is
Everything
innate to
reacts,
every. Yeah.
whether it's positive energy or negative energy, even the
Mhm.
cells in your body react to it.
Right.
You would know, because this is what I think is called biological inheritance, because our ancestors, the cavemen, how would they know impending danger? How did they learn? By actually facing that danger. And what happened to us as we evolved? We started to come to know that, okay, danger is impending, and or something that I don't like is coming closer. And I think that's what has happened. The cells in our body, through this evolution, they know, what's coming.
Mm. There's another question here from Sumaya. When you've healed from something or a situation, how do you train your brain or self to make sure not to go back to that or how you previously felt in that situation?
This is the whole point. When you train that brain, the brain does the work. You don't. Because you have trained it for so long. And of course, it takes time. Nothing happens overnight. People who are young, energized, they will find anything new is always difficult. Please remember this. Whenever you have anything new in your life, it's disturbing, it's distracting, it takes you time, it overwhelms you, it unnerves you. But then as you keep warming up to that new situation, you find yourself adapting to it, you find yourself growing within that. And that's what happens. So once you train your brain, you will not have to do much. The brain will do all the work. Even if for a certain period of time, let us say you have a bad memory of a breakup, and some song reminds you of a situation, or that was your favorite song together, and somewhere that music is playing, or the same song is playing, or something similar is playing, and for a second, of course, that memory part of your brain is going to be activated, where that memory is associated with something happy or something sad. It's usually an emotion that's involved with the memory. So when that that memory involved with that music is activated, of course you might find yourself transported for a second, but guess what? Because the brain has been trained, it will guide you back. That's not the direction you are taking, and it will actually distract you very naturally. You'll not even have to make an effort.
You've mentioned this whole brain training situation. So in the assumption that, we only know one or two techniques, let's say very basic stuff, what would be your top 5 brain training techniques that we could use in our day-to-day for the three thematic areas for today's topic, i.e. stress, anxiety, and depression. So let's say your top 5 or your top whatever, what would you recommend?
My number
based on-
one would definitely be gratitude, gratitude, gratitude.
Okay.
Because the human brain is unfortunately focusing more on the negative, or it notices the negative before it does the positive. We tend to see what we don't have rather than what we have. If we just start counting on how much we have, we'll probably run out of the day. But if we count what we do not have, it's probably just on our fingertips. And I think just like the figure ground perception, like we noticed the painting before we noticed you, Alicia, because of that color, maybe this is the kind of color you should be color coding your blessings and making them pop up, even if they're in the background. Make them pop up by color coding them on how much you have in your life to be grateful for. Because there's something about gratitude, which I'm sure a lot of you already know. Something about gratitude that just makes you become this magnet for more blessings. It makes you a magnet for more blessings. So that's definitely my number one. My number two would be, water therapy. When we are in pain, when we are crying, when we have lost someone, why do people offer us a glass of water? There's something about water being introduced into our system or to our system that does something drastic to the limbic system in our brain. It does something drastic to our bodies. So using water as a medium, either taking a shower or placing your hands in ice cold water. I'll come to this point, just remind me on, or maybe I can do that right now. The reason why I say that is because when you have that thought, any thought coming in that's painful, because obviously you don't run from happy memories. You run from those that cause you grief, that cause you pain, or that are too sick to, rerun again in your lives, or things like that. And when you are distracting yourself with ice cold water, what happens is your brain registers the experience of the ice cold water. So what happens is the memory you're experiencing gets shoved away into the back attic. And this is called expenditure. That when you have something painful going on in your lives, like for me, I'll give you an example, what I used to do. I used to hate taking injections. I still do. So every time I got, somebody wanting to give me an injection, I would take my nail and dig it deep into the palm of my hand. I wanted, and I still do that. I dig my nail or something hard against my body so that my whole energy system is towards that point where it is hurting me and I do not feel the shot. My whole energy field I activated towards that. So that point is called the point of expenditure. So if you want to have something in your life, let us say a situation where a marriage where you're deeply unhappy, a lot of women find solace in praying or meditation or calming, soothing exercises, in order to distract themselves. But it needs something of a higher level in order to get away from that point. Something that also requires movement, something that is of a higher force than what you're experiencing. So what can be that higher force than what you're experiencing, you will only know that. No one else can tell you what it is. So that's my number 2. I believe there was a question, Alicia.
I'm not sure about a question. I was just putting down some of the notes that you
Oh,
know, the
okay, all right.
suggestions that you
All
had
right.
left.
And my third one would be it a child, of course, it works wonderfully with children, or, you know, your husband or your wife or your friend. There is something about touch. So what you do is you find them agitated, you find them crying, just pick up the hand and start massaging the palms of the hand. Just do that, because you know, the acupressure points that are there get activated. Now, a lot of people are not going to, you know, acupressure is a totally different field. They might say, well, what about, you know, what's the role of psychotherapy in this? But touch is something, just like a hug is. It releases natural oxytocins in your body. You know, that's why we say hug frequently. But when you cannot hug, just pick up the hand and start massaging the palms. And you will find them calming down over a period of time as you're going on massaging. And you may use a medium over there, just like oil or you know, or some cream or something that is going to make the massaging easier. But even when you have nothing, you know, but just to have another human being's touch. A lot of people who do not have anyone else with them can actually self-soothe by doing it to themselves. But it works best when another person is doing it to you. You may call this as an exchange of energy, or an exchange of, you know, um, a replacement, or you can say maybe, you know, replacing your poor or weak energy at that moment with somebody's positive one, or somebody's balanced or more stable energy. So yeah, touch would be my third, you know, go-to techniques. My fourth go-to technique would be, believe it or not, I do say movement to people, would be to run, to just run. You know, be it wildly, be it freely, be it anyway, just run. No thoughts racing in your mind, just you and the breeze in your hair. Just run. But then grounding practices or therapeutic practices can be different for each person. And people don't realize that. I mean, especially for us women, my fifth one would be not just getting yourself a massage. It would be, even, you must have noticed that when you use a scrub, there's something about deep pressure. Now, people look upon work or chores around the house as something, you know, taxing. Oh no, this is work. But people do not know household work can be deeply therapeutic. Washing dishes, because it's making you move your midlines. Vacuuming, push and pull of the vacuum, all right? That's making the midlines of your hands move. These are very therapeutic work, you know. Cleaning the window pane, maybe in a circular motion, again, just like you're cleaning a plate, again, very therapeutic. So heavy work is always therapeutic, because it's not only moving your midlines, but it's providing you with deep pressure. Even when you're scrubbing yourself, you know, I use the St. Ives apricot scrub, because that's the one whose texture I like a lot. Even if you don't have that, using a loofah in order to, you know, just brush yourself and then taking a calming bath activates the cells in your body. There's something therapeutic about all that. But for a lot of people, I've noticed, I mean, I keep telling the women who come to me, like the garments that they're wearing, the abayas, They wear it for 2 days, 3 days without washing. And they might not smell it, but the other person can smell the humidity from the air, the dirt, every single thing. If your surroundings are not clean, not hygienic, and not in harmony with what you want your inner state to be in, then don't expect healing to be really fast. The inner and the outer should be a reflection of each other.
So this leads me to a question regarding some of us sometimes find us in environments where we don't feel that what should I say, is completely in our hands to, affect what kind of a situation we're in. For example, maybe you're living with family that you're not, on good terms with, and you don't feel you have the chance to move out on your own. For example, you're not married yet, or other situations.
Yeah,
So
yeah. We have so many women caught up in that situation. So for them, again, I do tell them, and I have a young girl who's living with her parents who constantly are, on the war path, constantly, and she has severe depression. Now, she cannot move out. She's not married, nothing at all. I told her to transform her room into a space where she can be. She told me, but the noises keep filtering in of them beating each other, and literally throwing furniture at each other, or, getting aggressive. And there's a lot of violence as well. And at that point of time, I told her, in your room, how high can that volume be? Even if it is of a white noise, and why I say white noise? Because you playing music or something higher than the violent sounds can actually produce more violence. Anything loud is also aggressive in nature. And that's why I say maybe even put on your headphones with some white noise, transport yourself to Paris, travel around the world. You can go wherever you want in your imagination, be in Maldives next to, the lapping, the waves lapping right next to your feet. And your mind will take you there to get you away from it. When you cannot
Interesting,
physically, when
sorry.
you cannot physically move, allow your mind to move, allow that mind to travel, allow the mind to get away. Because you see, in all of this, yes, physically your body is also experiencing that. But if you can protect your mind from it, then you'll be protecting yourself completely. And I think more than anybody else, Alicia, you have known on how many situations I've had in my life where I had to actually bounce back. And I think me training my patients over all these years has actually taught my brain on how to bounce back itself naturally. I never had to work too hard.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
definitely
But
witnessed.
also to understand that the human being is fragile. The human mind is also fragile, is also key, because trying to fight against what it is not always creates more imbalance. If that makes sense.
If you can repeat that last line.
I said, to know that the human being or the human mind is also fragile, to embrace that completely. Because when you fight against something that it is not, then you find more imbalance happening. To also know that we are vulnerable, we are fragile, we are, weak, or we are poor. To embrace all this, and yet to know that we are resilient, and yet we can still put up a fight despite all our softness. That's also part of it. Embrace all of it.
Mm. Mm.
Any questions in here?
There's I had actually asked a lady to join, but she's not here today. She's been battling, you know, a lot of stuff recently in her immediate household, and that includes, very depressive symptoms of her, young teen or young adult daughter. And what would you recommend for a parent who's, dealing with a child who's suicidal, for example, or, has become very,
Get them into,
or who has been through, sexual abuse or anything of that sort of nature?
get
How
them
do
into,
you,
cognitive behavioral therapy.
okay.
Yeah, because you see, I mean, despite me being a psychologist, I cannot be a psychologist for my own family. It doesn't work that way. You need a foreigner, you need a, a third party that's non-judgmental, who does not know everything about you, so they can view your case very neutrally. And that's why family members cannot be, your patients. So allow that mom to take her child for cognitive behavioral therapy with somebody trusted, somebody known, and somebody who's result oriented. Because any therapy, that keeps on continuing without the improvement happening over each session is something I would not look at. But in the West, it's completely different, They keep on taking it for years and years and years, and just hooked on to it. You need
Mm.
people to become independent and not dependent. And I see therapy that goes on for too long as making people become dependent.
What would be too long, and what would be like a good sort of range?
Oh, that depends on the situation. That depends on the situation. I mean, deep-seated trauma, like childhood trauma, usually takes much longer, to recover, because again, that's what is happening. The trauma is being replayed in the child's mind as they're growing up, especially if they happen to be a young adult. That means from childhood to young, to adulthood, they've kept on repeating the same pattern, and it has become so deep-seated that to go back down, so down in there, and to resolve that trauma, and then to plant that seed of healing in there, and watching that grow over a period of time, that can take a long time.
Mm.
Yeah. Any questions in here?
Everyone has an opportunity to ask. Here we have May's question. You want to read that, Lisa?
May is asking, how do you identify the reason for headaches, and what helps one remember the trauma specifically?
Too long to answer that, because it's very general, and I would need something specific to talk about that. You've got to remember that the physical state of your body is actually what your mental state is. Whatever mental condition that you are in always translates into some physical, manifestation in your body, be it your headache, be it your involuntary twitching, be it some part paining, some part becoming inflamed, because inflammation is so common when you're depressed, when you're stressed. inflammation in some part of your body. And when that, happens, I mean, for a lot of people who are into both energy healing and as well as, physical healing, they will tell you, unless and until they cannot fix your physical disabilities, let us put it this way, or your physical troubles, unless and until you put your mind at rest or you calm that mind.
And much of the tips you've shared are, so to say, tackling, because we're not separate body and mind, we're
We
the
are not,
unity of
we are
those.
not,
So
we are not,
yeah,
we are
so
not.
many of the tips are involving the physical, and through that resetting a state that we may perceive as mental, for example. But like you said, it could be also just that we're stuck in a certain lack
Absolutely.
of dopamine.
Absolutely.
or
And
things like that.
always, I think the first thing that people should do is, if you are having a headache, first find out the physical cause of it, because mental is not so easy for people to figure out immediately. Nobody likes to say, well, I'm getting a headache because I'm stressed out. It can be anything. It can be constricted blood vessels in your hair, in your head. It can be, being in extremely bright sunlight or anything. So first discount all those factors and then come down to what you think might be your mental state.
Mm.
Yeah.
So you basically gave some top, recommended tips based on what you would recommend, basically. So the last one was run, right? After gratitude, water, touch, run. Is there anything else that you would like to include?
Yeah. Run, and then I did tell you massage.
All right.
Deep work, heavy work, deep pressure, doing chores around the house. And just imagine that if we can change this perception of people, I've been doing all the work, I've been washing all the dishes, blah, 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 blah. Rather than, portraying that as work, suppose we have more therapists joining on board, especially the occupational therapists. If they can come on board and say, guess what, this is what is helping you heal, people would look at it very differently. People would
True.
look at work very differently.
True. And I just want to make a point here that one of the courses we offer at Qudra Healing is called the Tao, or the Tao of Islamic Qi. And in that, it's basically all practical tips and things. And one of the things that is emphasized in there is what you're saying, clean environment, chores, simply, making sure that the dishes or your sink is basically empty. All that is therapeutic.
That's what I'm saying. When they have their bios on, not washed for 2 days, 3 days, they don't even know that they're carrying the dirty energy with them wherever they go. Now, you cannot be expecting a good outcome with a bad robe, or your house is smelling nasty, and you're saying that, it's, I'm not feeling well, because it's not aligned with who you are. Yeah. I created a garden.
I'll be a testimonial for you on that. Dr. Uzma is so particular. Like, she runs, a school, a center. There'd always be fresh flowers. The place would be aired. Like, her staff had to wear spick and span clothes. There's no body odor anywhere. Extremely, very particular, very therapeutic. And obviously your home, so much
We
green
need
time
to
under
be, I
your
mean,
home.
because we are carriers of healing ourselves, you know that. We are carriers of healing ourselves. There's always someone out there with poorer energy than ours. And you never know when you might cross paths with them. It's just the way you are, the way you're dressed, or with the way you're talking, or how your teeth are brushed, or, you know, on how your abaya is smelling, or, you know, on the kind of handbag that you have. Um, these are the simple kind of things that actually, um, it's like being inside a vortex, maybe, because it creates its own energy. Having a clean space, it clear, you know, it creates its own energy. You don't have to really create it for you. It creates it by itself. Having a scented candle burning somewhere, you know, entering a space. Why do all these hotels and all look so nice, you know, and so welcoming and all? Because they know the ambience is key. And we do not create that ambience for ourselves. We don't create that for ourselves. I've got a very small garden, but I knew I had to create a space where, after dealing with everybody with mental issues, I knew I had to create a space where I could come back and I could just relax and just be myself. And Alicia, you have seen that space. It's full of plants. You know, it's just like a greenhouse. You know, and I just sit down in the middle of that, and I know I've been transported.
Mm. Okay, so we have another question. Thank you for that. How to deal with anxiety and procrastination that comes from work?
Uh, Anxiety that comes from work. Now, I think the one thing that, I mean, it's again a very long topic, but the one thing that I would suggest for anyone to do regarding the work is, when you know that anxiety is going to build up, is to get yourself a little organized. You know, when you know you have a task, divide it down into smaller steps, and that is called task analysis. Break that down into smaller steps, and what you do is, as you keep, you know, finishing off one step, take it off or wipe it off, and that will give you a sense of achievement, because your big tasks can be overwhelming, smaller ones are not. So when you take them off, there's a sense of accomplishment. And what is happening is, when you accomplish one small task, it reinforces you positively immediately. So that is a sense of achievement when you cross off one step, that, oh, I've done this, and then the next one, and you'll probably find yourself working far better and far more organized manner once you divide your task into smaller steps.
Mm.
Here's also another question. What would be advice for trauma that comes after a bad marriage?
I think knowing that فَإِنَّ مَعَ الْعُسْرِ يُسْرًا, that every bad is followed by good as well. I have been in a bad marriage myself, and to all, and by the way, my center is called Hope, and people think, oh, we should call it Hope, and no, this was my hope, you know, because that's what I see in everything. I do see the silver lining, you know. Trauma through a bad marriage, uh, I do not know on the person who experiences bad marriage, but for me it was like such a relief. I mean, when I did get divorced, yes, I did cry, but not for long, just for one day, I think, because it was the breakdown of a marriage. But that sense of relief, I actually felt like I had wings and I could fly. And I think everybody would take it very differently. I mean, the person who's talking about this trauma, maybe they suffered physical damage in this marriage, maybe physical assaults or something. It can be emotional as well, it can be financial as well. But it's only our mind that tells us that something is possible or impossible. I think for this universe, nothing is impossible. If you feel that recovery is possible, it is possible. But if you're teaching your mind, I'm so damaged, I won't be able to get up again, you will not get up again. Have a talk with yourself. Have a talk with that mind. Keep telling yourself the possibilities this universe has for you. Think of the opportunities that are there that you can use for yourself to create a better world. And I think what you escaped is far better than what you were in.
Mm.
Having a different perspective is very, very vital. And I think that people should be talking to other people who probably went through that same experience and not connect with those who did not. I mean, not everybody will go through that experience and they can give you wonderful advice. But when you have somebody who's been in the same space, gone through the same thing, healed and come out of it and resolved the trauma, those are the kind of people that you should be connecting with to get insight from them. Because there is a certain empathy in the way those people will guide you. There's a certain understanding because they have been in similar shoes or in a similar space.
Right. You mentioned, and I just want to just re-emphasize, you're basically saying, support system, and with the right sort of, your chosen support people. And a lot of people who are going through certain milestones or changes or, life stages, what would you advise them basically if they felt like they're alone? How would you ask them to seek out like a community, a space, for example?
Yeah, here's the thing. People who say, I feel alone, are people who are not reaching out to others themselves. You need to reach out in order to have company. How did we connect for this meeting? It is because you invited us into your space and asked us to join. I wouldn't be here.
Right.
So-
So basically this, yeah.
Yes, if you
Okay.
want a friend, you have to start by being one.
Mm.
You want company, reach out. You need somebody to listen to, have someone, get someone. People are not that difficult. You have loads of empathetic souls, around us, loads of them. But try to find out which one that is, because nowadays there are loads of, wolves in sheep's clothing. Those who are empathic and yet who are against you or against your healing, or may have, because the world is very twisted nowadays, people are twisted. The way of thinking is twisted. And very unfortunately, women can be women's, worst enemy. So you have all those things going on as well. So be very selective, and I've learned that from experience, and and from age as well, on who to allow into your vortex or into your personal space and who not to allow. That is extremely vital. So just because you're lonely does not mean that you allow anyone inside.
Right.
Yeah.
This basically comes to, it's just bringing us to our, we're gone over the 1.5 hours and we want to conclude, but I just, wanted to just
Because
sort of
this
tie it
topic
in.
is very long. I mean,
Yes,
people who usually have me
obviously we can sit
on,
here for all day,
yes,
basically. But
hours and hours, discussing, um, but maybe I need to have a more specific topic the next time. So just to talk only on that topic might be far better and maybe far more beneficial for the ladies that are joining in. But this is just my perspective. You may have a different one.
right, no, definitely. I just wanted to make a point that, thank you so much for your time. I just want to tie it into, for example, in all the stuff that you've shared, your wisdom and knowledge and expertise, how important would you say, like, for example, this particular group called Divani Ish, where we have the monthly support system, and what we do is, well, it's not a support system, well, it's kind of like a space, a community, and the main sort of modality of self-healing is through the art of penning. So you're basically, documenting your states and emotions, and then that comes out as poetry, and that becomes a means of healing. As a psychologist, as a professional in your field of mental health, in just like one sentence, how important do you think this form of healing is?
Well, it is called a release. This is something I do with my patients frequently, and this can be for deep-seated trauma as well. That if you think of one thing in your life that is hurting you, or you want to address a situation, or you want to address your abuser, because you need that release of the pent-up feelings that you have, I want you to sit down in a quiet space where nobody is going to disturb you for hours and hours and hours. And I want you to pour it all out, be it in the form of poetry, prose, anything that you want, just writing the words that describe your condition. It can be a letter to God. It can be a letter to your parents. It can be to your abuser, to your tormentor. It can be to the childhood bully who made your life hell. It can be to anyone, but just pour your heart out. I'm not talking about writing 1 page, 2 page. Write till you're spent, till you're totally spent. And then you take that sheet or the sheets that you have, and I want you to tear it up with full force and then burn it and watch those go up in flames. And this is called release. There is something about just pouring it out, writing it out, burning it up, and khalas, it's gone. You have released yourself from it. But unless and until those pent-up feelings are placed, on paper. So I think what you guys are doing is very, very similar to that. And I think it's going to help a lot of people in the long run.
Wonderful. Really, really needed to hear that. Another thing is, how can everyone connect with you? I know you have services, you offer therapy, you're a private consultant. You also have a new, for those in the kingdom, I'm not sure who's here from the kingdom, but you have your therapy on the go, many sorts of ways to reach out to you. So, how can people connect to you?
Maybe through Instagram. Maybe
Okay.
Alicia, maybe you can post my link over there.
I'll do that.
Yes. Because Facebook is starting to become very obsolete. Otherwise, they can connect with me on Facebook as well.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I think I'll put down your Instagram account here. And whoever's on Instagram, which is also therapeutic, and if it's used, I guess, correctly, it's a great way to connect and also be updated in what we're up to, what we're doing. We have many platforms to support seekers, especially women. So we're working in many ways to uplift and support one another. So you can follow Dr. Uzma Rahim. And I think that wraps it up. We have one mantra that Louisa can read. prior to
That was
concluding.
the one we
or
were
if
listening
anybody else-
to.
Oh, right. Okay. Okay. Because I saw it in text.
So the translation I
Right.
put in the chat for that mantra, and I can also put the link, but I think it was in the chat already. So it's there for
Okay.
anyone to
Okay.
pick up if you scroll a
Right.
bit
I
higher in
just-
the chat.
Okay. Okay, good. So that's that.
Thank you, May.
Yeah. Can we have someone read that? May? You're the prayer lady at the end, meditation. We'd love to have you just, we can close off with that. If you'd like to close your eyes, maybe place your hand on your heart, whatever works for you or doesn't work. Doesn't
I
matter.
think May mentioned her mic is not working.
Oh, right. So then that's you then.
All right. God is looking out for us, gives us the light, and takes care of our affairs. God is merciful and never forgets us. God guides us, giving us good people to help us. God does not allow hurt to come to us. I take comfort in the thought of God. When I remember God, I feel peaceful and happy, and all my pain departs.
Wow, it's great. So until next time, I want to thank you collectively, Dr. Uzma, for your time and sharing and
Most welcome.
wisdom,
Thank
your
you.
energy. And just, I want to correct you. You said, I'm not an energy healer. I don't know about that. You sure are. This itself was an energetic healing for all of us.
I
Thank
hope
you.
so, inshallah. Thank you so much for having me.
Perfect. Okay, until next time. Salams and peace to everybody.
Walaikum salam.